from Hollywood, I'm Martin Grove, welcoming you to our Screendollars podcast, Box Office Autopsy. Right now, we'll look at the movie marketplace and analyze how things are going and where they're going, sharing some opinions from my perspective after decades of talking about Hollywood on CNN Entertainment Tonight and as a Hollywood Reporter columnist. Moviegoers made it clear once again this weekend that they're very happy to be back in theaters whenever something's playing they really want to see. Needless to say, Disney and Marvel's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was exactly what they wanted to see, and exhibitors now have the kind of ticket sales and tasty concession stand revenues to start recovering from 3 months without big movies. On today's box office autopsy, we'll focus on Wakanda's opening, and later in our Oscar Outlook Spotlight, we'll talk about what the Academy hiring Jimmy Kimmel as host signals for the 95th Oscars. But we start today with Wakanda Forever, which just brought cinemas everywhere back to life. And this quick look helps explain why.
Stop! Right there! Who are you? And how did you get in here?
This place is amazing. The air is pristine. And the water. My mother told stories about a place like this. A protected land with people that never have to leave, that never have to change who they were. What reason do you have to reveal your secret to the world?
I am not a woman who enjoys repeating herself. Who are you?
I have many names. My people call me Ahkukunkan. But my enemies call me Namor.
The super sequel opened to a dazzling $180 million at 4,396 domestic theaters, the year's second biggest opening after Disney Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness with $187.4 million. Some exhibitors had anticipated Wakanda kicking off to $185 to $200 million, while more cautious exhibs were thinking $165 to $175 million. Hollywood handicappers were projecting $175 million plus, which was slightly more conservative than their earlier buzz for $175 to $200 million. Wakanda, which reportedly cost $250 million to produce, also scored big at the international box office with $150 million from 55 markets, not including China and Russia. That brings its global opening cum to $330 million. Wakanda's running time of 2 hours 41 minutes makes its opening even more impressive. Films with lengths pushing 3 hours typically lose one showing daily, which doesn't help despite playing in extra auditoriums to provide more seating capacity. The original pre-pandemic Black Panther, which only ran 134 minutes, opened February 16, 2018 to $202 million for 3 days of President's Weekend and $242.2 million for 4 days. It went on to do $700.1 million domestic and nearly $647 million internationally for a global cum of $1.35 billion. Late in the week, tracking continued to show Wakanda was a 4-quadrants movie, with an average first-choice score 28 points over norm. Its top demo was Older Women, who were 38 points over norm. Next best were Older Men with 30 points over norm. Younger men were 25 points over norm. The least enthusiastic demo was Younger Women with 22 points over norm. Critics are an okay 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, but that's down from 94% early in the week. What matters more, however, is RT's audience score of 95%, which means great word of mouth will be driving Wakanda in the weeks ahead. Moviegoers in Los Angeles and New York City also had some high-profile, exclusive counter-programming to choose from this weekend, thanks to Universal and Amblin Entertainment's PG-13 drama The Fabelmans, directed and co-written by Steven Spielberg, opening at 2 prime locations in each city, Manhattan's Union Square and Lincoln Square theaters, and LA's The Grove and Century City multiplexes. Fabelmans grossed an impressive $160,000 at those 4 theaters, averaging $40,000 per location. Since premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival in September, where it won the People's Choice Award, Fabelmans has been generating a major buzz as a leading Best Picture Oscar nominee. Its early start in Manhattan and LA will make it easily accessible to many Academy voters who prefer to see films in theaters rather than stream them on the Academy's online screening website. Fabelmans opens nationwide November 23rd at about 600 theaters for Thanksgiving weekend and should do well with families with older children. Families with young kids will likely head to Disney's much wider release of its animated adventure, Strange World. Fabelmans, by the way, is doing great with the critics, who are 95% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's already a huge hit with audiences who are 96% on RT, which means favorable word of mouth in the weeks ahead. At the film's LA premiere, Steven Spielberg shared some thoughts about seeing movies on big theater screens versus streaming them at home.
Every movie should be seen on a big screen. Every movie. The movies are made for movie theaters. Now I'm fine about films that are streamed and streaming platforms, and the most important thing is storytelling. And I really, at this point, don't care how I see good stories. If I see them on my iPhone, not a great way to see something, but I just love good stories. But because of the traditions that I was raised believing in, I seriously believe that movies are best seen in the company of strangers, in large theaters, with a giant screen. And I will always feel that way.
Looking ahead, after its supersized opening this weekend, Wakanda Forever will reign at next weekend's box office with a strong hold as it faces no threats from either of November 18th's openings. First, there's She Said, Universal Annapurna and Plan B's R-rated sex assault drama, opening at about 2,200 theaters, which is underperforming on tracking. Its average first choice is very low and 4 points under norm. All demos are below norm. Its best demo is Younger Women, who are just equal to norm. It's not appealing at all to Younger Men, who on Definitely Not Interested tracking scored 9 points above norm. Critics are an okay 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. This scene will tell you if the critics are right.
How do you feel about it now?
I feel like it dictated a certain direction my life took. But I just felt that it was this huge error of judgment that sort of marked me and all my decisions. And I felt such shame that I let him do that.
Did you think that he had done the same to other girls?
I thought that he must have tried it. But that they'd all said no. It was like he took my voice that day. Just when I was about to start finding it.
Next weekend's other wide opening is Searchlight's R-rated horror dramedy The Menu at 2,800 plus theaters. Here, too, there's absolutely no challenge to Wakanda's second weekend ticket sales. First choice tracking shows all demos are below norm for The Menu, with the average 50% below norm. The critics, however, are a good 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's a scene to help you decide if you want to see it or skip it.
To our male diners, we now offer you the chance to escape. You'll be given a 45-second head start, at which point members of my staff will try and catch you. If they do catch... Okay. 45 seconds starts now.
Hold it.
What?
Sorry. Come on, you know I'm awful.
Wonderful critic.
I'll send for help first thing.
You too. I'll leave you to it.
Care to join me inside? It's getting chilly. Just put it this way. Okay. So.
With Thanksgiving getting closer, it's clear from tracking reports that Disney's PG animated action-adventure Strange World is looking like the family choice for the long holiday weekend. Its best definite interest is from younger women, who are 5 points over norm. The next best demo is older women, who are 6 points over norm. Both male demos are below norm, but it's women who will generally have most influence over what to see during Thanksgiving weekend. Also arriving November 23rd for Thanksgiving weekend are Sony and STX's Korean War set PG-13 action drama Devotion. Universal and Amblin's PG-13 drama The Fabelmans from Steven Spielberg, United Artists Releasing and MGM's R-rated horror romantic drama Bones and All, and Netflix's limited theatrical release at about 600 theaters of its PG-13 crime dramedy Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, with Daniel Craig returning as Detective Benoit Blanc. However they wind up doing at the box office, it's great to see so many films going into theaters after so many months of no big openings. While Wakanda is really lifting exhibitor spirits this weekend, it's worth remembering that no single film can erase a 3-month product drought. AMC CEO Adam Aron addressed the studio's pipeline product pinch on AMC's recent third-quarter investor call. Exhibition's biggest challenge today, he told analysts, isn't streaming competition, COVID fears, or devising new release windows. The big problem, per Aron, is, quote, above all else, movie theater operators need more movies, unquote. No one really knows why studio releases dried up from July through mid-fall. The most commonly reported reason was that post-production houses were slowed down by a logjam of special effects movies after pandemic production delays. Other observers note that distributors have saved lots of money by not having to market as many titles as before the pandemic. Marketing costs vary from studio to studio and by genre, and also by what time of year films open. But there could be $40 to $60 million in savings for a big, but not supersized, movie. That cost range reflects not just buying media to advertise a film, but also creative expenses to produce one or more trailers per title, as well as TV spots and other video and print materials, plus paying for publicity and promotion campaigns. Multiply those savings by even a few films, and they add up to big numbers. Time now to shine our Oscar Outlook spotlight on the awards battleground, which at the 94th Oscars was exactly that, as Will Smith ran on stage to let Chris Rock know just how unhappy he was with the host's last joke. Bringing Jimmy Kimmel on board to host the 95th annual Oscars is a good first move by the Academy that signals a more traditional show. In the past, well-liked hosts like Johnny Carson and Billy Crystal provided audiences at home and those attending the show with some good laughs that poked fun gently at that year's big movie targets, and a good time was had by all. The 94th Oscars, of course, made history thanks to a bad taste Chris Rock joke and its face-smacking reply by Will Smith, who minutes later was back on stage happily accepting his Best Actor Oscar. Had somebody else hit Rock, they'd have been tossed out of the theater straight away. The Academy's management at the time just didn't get it. They've since been succeeded by a much smarter team. Kimmel's hosted two previous Oscars, the 89th in 2017 and the 90th in 2018. He's already seen chaos erupt on stage in 18 when Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway announced La La Land as Best Picture. But the winner was really Moonlight. The wrong envelope wound up getting the blame. Hopefully Kimmel doesn't tell any jokes on ABC's Oscar telecast March 12th that provoke new on-stage assaults. At least Smith's banned from being there. But clearly Kimmel gets the idea. He's told his viewers, quote, "I've already started making a list of whose names I should keep out of my effing mouth. You know, you can't be too careful," unquote. And that's a wrap for today's box office autopsy. We'll return next week to check out the openings of She Said and the menu, and we'll talk about the latest awards action in our Oscar Outlook feature. So please join us again then, and thanks very much for listening. Time now for our film flashback look at what was happening in Hollywood right around now, way back then. Let's set today's time travel dial for November 13th, 1995. When GoldenEye, the 17th James Bond film, premiered at New York's Radio City Music Hall November 13th, 1995, it introduced Pierce Brosnan as the fifth actor to play 007, following Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, and Timothy Dalton. While the screenplay was being written, the producers expected Dalton to be returning as Bond for the third time, so the writing's tone matched Dalton's darker, more realistic approach to the character. However, quite unexpectedly, Dalton announced while shooting his 1994 miniseries Scarlet that he was quitting as 007. Dalton had signed to do 3 Bonds, and already had 2 behind him, 1987's The Living Daylights and 1989's License to Kill, when rights to the franchise became tied up in litigation that delayed for about 5 years production of what would have been Dalton's 3rd Bond episode. Dalton was okay with doing one more Bond film, but Bond's founding co-producer Albert R. Cubby Broccoli told him that after that lengthy production gap, he'd need to keep playing the role for a while. Dalton refused, saying he didn't want to play Bond for the rest of his life. Dalton got the part when Roger Moore left after his 7th Bond outing in 1985's A View to a Kill. When the producers first approached Dalton, he was busy doing theater. They went to Brosnan, but he couldn't get out of his TV deal for Remington Steele. So they tried Dalton again, and this time he said he'd fit it in his tight schedule. Before Brosnan was cast, reports said Hugh Grant, Liam Neeson, Sam Neill, and others were under consideration. Brosnan was the last 007 that Broccoli cast in his Eon Productions franchise. GoldenEye was the first Bond movie not produced by Cubby, as he'd stepped down and made his daughter, Barbara Broccoli, and stepson, Michael G. Wilson, the series' new producers, which they still are today. Cubby consulted to Eon during production of GoldenEye, his final project before his death in 1996. When Brosnan was presented in London to the media, June 8, 1994, he didn't look anything like Bond. With a full beard he'd grown for Robinson Crusoe, which was starting production the next day. GoldenEye also was the first Bond movie with Judi Dench playing MI6 Chief M. It reportedly was Lois Maxwell, the iconic Miss Moneypenny in the Bonds from 1962 through 85, who'd suggested, back in 85, that M should be played by a woman. But what Maxwell had in mind was that she'd become the new M after getting a big promotion at MI6. During production, Roger Moore turned up on set to visit his son, Christian Moore, who was GoldenEye's uncredited 3rd assistant director. The proud father joked as the crew greeted him that the producers had brought him back after looking at the first footage of Brosnan as Bond. That's it for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another box office autopsy next week. In Hollywood for Screendollars, I'm Martin Grove.